Hi, my name is Paul Easton from lemonangels.com. Make a difference, change the world. What we do is we look for people around the world, families mainly, that have been fed a lemon, something that's gone wrong in their life, maybe not something necessarily their fault, and we try and help out as best we can by using people on the internet that want to be part of making a difference. And today we've on the call, we've got Lene from Australia. You there, Lene?
I'm here, Paul. Hi.
All right, great. So
Hi.
just flick over on the screen. There you go. So I'll let you introduce and tell me, or tell us who's watching, what's been going on in your life in the last period of time.
Sure. Well, for the last 3 years, my eldest son, Lindsay, he's 15 now. He's been really quite sick, and the first 2 years they really didn't know what was wrong with him. We went to quite a lot of doctors and specialists. We just seemed to be going from one to the next, and even the specialists were a little bit baffled as to what was going on.
So
Um,
when you say sick, what do you exactly mean on a regular, on a daily basis type thing?
Yeah, it was every day. He what actually started off as just influenza B, then became glandular fever, um, and then he picked up a bit of a stomach parasite as well, which we thought was what was causing a lot of vomiting and nausea and headaches. But this just kept continuing on even after he'd been treated for that, and we were really quite beside ourselves, just wondering what was wrong with our son, and he just couldn't attend school because he was just vomiting every day and feeling sick and just exhausted all the time, and these headaches were relentless. And so, in a very short space of time, he'd gone from about 5 GPs to paediatrician to gastroenterologist to pediatric rheumatologist to psychologist, another psychologist, another pediatrician, and basically we got to the point where we just knew that he wasn't well, but no one could give us, excuse me, no one could give us any real answers on what was going on.
Sounds like you went from a lot of one doctor's office to the next, pretty much by the sound of it.
Yeah, and loads of tests too, like just so many tests that he had run, and we just got to the point where we just realised we were going to have to just get on with our lives and just face the fact that we knew our son was unwell, but we didn't know what was wrong with him, and just get on with our lives as best as we could. And we reached a point where he started to describe these symptoms of his body freezing and the words going out of his head and not being able to speak. And I just said to him, look, that's just not normal. You're off to the doctors again. And they thought he had was having anxiety attacks.
Hmm.
And they sent me home with a antidepressant, prescription
Oh,
at that
nice.
point.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So I just, as a mum, I just knew that, sure, I knew he was depressed because he'd been sick for so long, but I just felt that there was something more than that going on. And I didn't give him the antidepressants because I really felt that there was more to it than that. Yeah, so after a few months after that, actually, my husband was made redundant. He was in a job that he loved, and yeah, was made redundant very suddenly. And then, pretty much within about, I think it was only about 4 weeks from that time, within 4 to 6 weeks, he was standing in the, we were sitting in the lounge room talking to my son. My son was standing there actually asking his dad to help him write his first resume to get a part-time job,
Hmm.
because Lindsay, my eldest, he's 15, and mid-sentence he basically just collapsed to the floor, started having a seizure, and all I just remember that day was hearing my husband just screaming, "Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!" And
Wow, that would have been scary.
it was. So we went into the hospital, and they decided that it would be best if they actually run an MRI on his brain, and that
Hmm.
happened the week after. And within 24 hours of getting that MRI done, we got another call. I'll never forget getting that call from the head of the radiology department at the hospital, just saying, look, Mrs. Carter, we need you to bring your son back in, straight away this afternoon. We need to have a closer look at something. And I just remember saying to him, a closer look at something. What's that something? And he just said, look, we just need to have a closer look at an area in your son's brain. And within 24 hours of that, we actually had a diagnosis that our son had a brain tumour. And it was a very surreal experience. Like, a lot of people sort of think that getting news like that, it was very devastating for us, but we had had such a long time of uncertainty and not knowing what was wrong with him. In a really strange way, it was a relief to know finally that there was actually something wrong with our son, and that we need, to have that clarity so that we could move forward from that point, because when you're sort of facing that every day and that uncertainty, you don't know what you can do to help your child. So within a short space of time, they actually had changed their minds and thought he had a parasite in his head. So then we
after the MRI, they said they thought there was a parasite.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was within probably about a week or 2 weeks, and then they started, having a bit of a group discussion at the hospital and wondering if it might be quite a rare parasite that actually gets into the brain. And so we sent tests off overseas. We actually sent tests off to Austria. We sent tests off to America. We had tests that the hospital had tests go down to the Westmead Hospital in Sydney, and they all actually came back negative. So we had this sort of glimmer of hope for a moment that it could be something that's still quite serious, but I guess in the scheme of things better than a brain tumour. And but that was wrong, so our hopes there were very defeated. Yeah, and that just led us on a path of, I guess we were quite hopeful at first that they could operate, but that soon turned into quite a lot of shock when we went to the first neurosurgeon, and he told us that that he did not recommend surgery for our son because he didn't believe he would come out the same way, just purely because of the location of the tumour. Yeah, so there's a lot to digest up until that point.
So what period of time went from the first time he was sick until you at least knew what was going on?
It was 2 years. It was almost 2 years to the day, actually, before we had that brain tumour diagnosis. So there was a lot of time. It was a really awful time. I remember the tension that we had in our whole household, because we're continually dealing with this child that even just a simple trip to go and see family for a family dinner, like grandparents and things like that, became an absolutely overwhelming task for him, just to leave the house and to go. He'd say to us, "I'm just so exhausted, I don't want to go anywhere, I just want to rest." It became very hard, and there was a lot of, we even sort of went through situations where my husband and he would say, "Oh, do you think he's putting it over us?" And I just felt that no, he was really not well. Yeah.
Must have been hard on everyone else, sort of having to sort of change around what was going on at the same time.
Yeah, it was very hard, and very hard for his brother to see, this child that used to love, just doing active things with him, to suddenly just not struggle to leave the house a lot, just not be able to go to school, not be able to do a lot of the active things that he used to do because he was just so exhausted all the time. And it was a real change of lifestyle, actually, for us. Yeah.
So in that 2 years, how much time was he at school? Was he away most of that time, or was it backwards and forwards, or?
He was away for most of that time. Yeah, I mean, he could manage the odd day here and there, but I'd often be getting calls from the school saying, he feels sick, or he's got a massive headache, or can you please come and get him early? So the days that he could manage to get there, there was no real ability to focus, or he'd gone from being able to read a lot, like he'd leave the library with a pile of books this high, and just loved reading and was really quite a good reader, to not even wanting to pick up a book because where the tumour's located, it's in that temporal lobe, which is the area where people can have where the comprehension is and the ability to read and understand words.
Mm-hmm.
So it became very hard for him to do, even schoolwork through this time.
Yeah. So what led you on from here when you got to this point?
Well, I guess we didn't stop at one opinion from a neurosurgeon. We actually went on and got 2 other opinions as well, and it became very clear to us that if they did go in and attempt surgery, that there was, could be some pretty dire consequences of that. So, there was a risk of him losing his speech completely, impacting learning and development, impacting memory, and so we just still kept coming back to the most, who we felt was the most experienced neurosurgeon saying, pediatric neurosurgeon saying, your son will not come out the same way. And we just felt very strongly that we could not go down that path. We had to explore other options of non-invasive treatment. Chemo wasn't an option for him because of the type of tumour, and
Mm-hmm.
radiation therapy wasn't an option because of the area as well where the tumour is located. So we were actually recommended to go overseas to the US to get some treatment, and so we travelled. I travelled on my own with my son to the US, and for the first 4 weeks he was on a treatment of an immune vaccine, and the next MRI actually showed that, well, they thought it was growing, so they recommended we move to Washington State and get some treatment up there. So we were actually in Washington State for another 2 months before returning to Australia.
So that's what, 4 weeks? Is that a total of 3 months in the US, or just about?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, so
okay.
the first was 3 months in total, and when we got back we were quite excited because his tumour had shrunk by almost a half of its original size, and so we basically turned around and went straight back. Because of the visas, we had to keep sort of coming back to Australia every 3 months. So we went back for another 3 months, and the time he'd been off the treatment in Australia, unfortunately the tumour had started to grow again.
Oh,
And
so when he came home, basically the tumour started growing again back from the US.
yeah. So off the treatment, it started to grow. We went back to the US, and then we managed to keep the tumour stable for the second trip. And then the third trip, actually the second trip while we were away, my husband was still looking for work. It was about 8 months before he found work. So when we finally came home from the second trip, the day we came home, he actually started a new job. So we were so excited because it had just been such a tumultuous time for us as a family to be not only dealing with being separated, but dealing with all the I guess the medical costs of being in a foreign country as well. No insurance covering us. Basically everything out of pocket, and leaving my 13-year-old here as well with my husband. So that was a very tough time. And we've just been back to the US again for a third trip, this time just for 6 weeks. The plan was to go on to Germany and actually get a special dendritic cell vaccine treatment combined with a couple of other therapies.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just simply out of reach at this point in time financially because of the cost. So we've returned back to Australia, and we're here at the moment just doing the best we can with him. Yeah.
So what would you have spent so far in travel costs alone?
I haven't looked at it exactly just recently, but I think at least $65,000 in that time. We have had some support from people doing some fundraising for us as well. They raised around just over 20,000,
Oh,
which was a massive help. And yeah, we had a nurse donate their time to actually travel over to the States with us. Someone donated the first lot of flights for us to go the first trip to the US. Um, so all of that just helped. I mean, it would have been a lot more than that we would have outlaid if it wasn't for, that support. So it would have been probably closer to at least 85,000 if, we hadn't have had that support. Um,
and what that other medical treatment? What was that sort of price that you said it was out of reach?
the treatment in Germany, basically they were expecting that Lindsay would need 2 to 3 phases of treatment. The very
Hmm.
first phase was going to be approximately 65,000 Australian dollars, and
Wow.
that's without airfares, without accommodation. Other expenses were not included in that, like MRIs and things, other tests that he may have required while he was there. So we'd have to, sort of cover cost of living over there as well while he was undergoing the treatment. The second phase, we believe, is about the 65,000 mark as well, so that's 130,000. In the third phase, a bit less than that, so just depending on whether he needed that third phase. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. So that sort of brings us on to how we sort of met and what you're doing and how we sort of came to meet each other. Could you go into that?
hmm Yeah, we actually met doing a course, and I guess especially the second trip I had to the US, I realised that my life was just changing forever. I used to run a business. I had to step away from that. I couldn't see clients anymore. I was a full-time caregiver for my son, and so basically I realised that I had to look at creating some kind of income from online, and I needed to be able to work anywhere in the world, and so I set up a business that I could actually sell products on Amazon, and yeah, so that's how we met.
Yeah, so that's for those watching the call. That's what I do as well, and that's sort of the reason that I did this call with Lene. So some people sit back and take help from organisations and different things, but Lene is like quite different. That she's actually decided to stand on her own 2 feet and start a business, which is hard enough on your own, but then do it while you're traveling and doing everything else. So the sort of the whole point of this call is to help her out with the products that she's going to be releasing on Amazon very soon. And right below this video, there'll be a small box where you can put your email address, and when Lene launches her next product, basically we'll send you an email letting you know where it is, and possibly a coupon so that some of the sales come through very quickly. And we'll also ask if it's a great product, that if you could do a review on that product as well, because reviews help sales at Amazon. So that's sort of the whole purpose of this call, is we'd love you to if you're watching this, to help us out and get something out of it. And I'd like you to share this video as much as possible, as far and wide, so we can do something to help Lene out. And it's all about, for me, it's all about making a difference and changing the world. If Lemon Angels can help one family out, then maybe we can grow and reach 100. So the more you can tell about us, what we're doing, the more people we can reach. So Lene, is there anything you'd like to wrap it up with?
I'd just like to say thank you very much, Paul. I really appreciate you doing this, and I just think it's a great concept, being able to pay it forward and help families to be able to, basically move forward from a difficult time in their lives. And yeah, so thank you very much. I appreciate your effort and this project that you're doing. It's amazing.
Well, I
Thank
think if we help one family out, that's a start. If we have 100 families out, that's better. Hey, maybe we'll get to 1,000 and keep going. So who knows? I know where it can go. I'll sign it off there and leave it at that. Catch you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.